All right, yeah, thank you guys. Tyler Mahoney here with Truman Lake Fishing Intel. We've got a booth right over here by Everhart's. A little bit about Truman Lake Fishing Intel. We started in August of 2020. We've done nearly 2,500 fishing reports since then. We're really a news and content website about Truman Lake. You can think of it as like an online newspaper subscription. You buy a premium membership, you get access to all of our fishing reports, tournament reports, news, and articles. Lots of content, video content, podcasts every single month. If you own a boat and or a kayak, which is what we're going to be talking about here shortly, it's a great resource for learning how to break down the lake, whether you're talking about crappie, bass, catfish, hybrids, and more. So be sure to check out TrumanLakeFishingIntel.com if you don't stop by our booth. But we are right over here running a show special, $25 off our one-year membership, which is normally $75. It'll be the best deal of the year. I am joined on stage right now with several of my buddies, JB Gray, Chad Davison, and Jared Fosnow. We're going to be talking about bass fishing on Truman Lake, but in particular, kayak fishing for bass. We're going to be talking about just the differences between kayak bass fishing tournaments and regular bass fishing tournaments, and just some of the different kayaks that are out there to choose from, and just kind of methodologies and strategies for how you're fishing out of these and how you're breaking down Truman Lake. So first of all, I wanted to start with Chad. Chad, can you kind of fill me in on what kind of kayak you're running right now, and maybe fill me in on the different kinds of kayaks, why you're running the one that you are?
Yeah, thank you. My primary fishing kayak is an Old Town Autopilot 136. This is a 13.5 foot motorized fishing kayak. I've had it for about 5 years. I got it about 5 years ago at Everhart's Outdoors. They got a full selection of Old Town and New Canoe kayaks, and it's been a great kayak for me. It's big, stable. It is a heavy kayak, so I use a trailer for it, but it has a Minn Kota spot lock trolling motor mounted on the front of it, and it's great. So you can spot lock on windy days. You can use the motor to get around and fish. It allows a lot of control while you're fishing, and it has a great weight capacity. I can carry lots of fishing tackle. Of course, it's got lithium batteries. I've got full electronics, live scope. I carry about 10 rods with me, and really I can fish out of that kayak pretty similar to how I would fish out of a bass boat. I can stand up and fish all day. And the great thing about fishing out of a kayak versus a bass boat is, of course, you don't have all the expenses and the gas and everything, but you can launch at a lot of places where you might not be able to get a bass boat. Truman Lake has a lot of great access around the lake, but there's some places that you can't get to in a bass boat, and maybe there's not a ramp there. You can launch a kayak there pretty easy, so it works out pretty good.
Yeah. I was just sitting here thinking, you said you carried 10 rods. That blows my mind that you could have 10 fishing rods in a kayak.
Yeah, it gets a little tricky on Truman sometimes with all the trees. You got all these 10 rods sticking up in the back, so you got to be strategic when you're going through the timber. You don't get your rods hung up in the trees, but most of the time it works pretty good.
Yeah. To break down a little bit some of the cost difference. So, you get into a Phoenix bass boat and you're in it for $80,000-$90,000. To fully rig out your kayak, what should someone be prepared on their budget? Is this like a $2,500 kayak? Is this a $7,500 setup between all the electronics and the trolling motor and everything?
Yeah, there's a huge range of fishing kayaks and cost. You can get into kayak tournaments for in a relatively inexpensive kayak, but a kayak like mine, when you buy the kayak, it comes with the motor and a seat, and you're in the $5,000 range on that, and then of course you got to buy a battery, and then you can rig it out as much or as little as you want. You start adding electronics. I've got a power pole micro on the back. Get a trailer. If you wanted to add live scope, I even have a 3 horsepower electric motor that I mount to the back of it. It's called a Newport that allows me to go. I can almost get on plane with that motor. It goes up close to 6.5 miles an hour. That all adds a lot of cost. You could easily get $15,000 or $20,000 in a fully decked out rigged kayak, but you know, it's kind of whatever you want to do. You can spend as much or as little as you want.
Yeah, that's fascinating, but it is a lot more accessible than going out and buying your Phoenix or your Nitro for the average person. So that's a really great option. Jared, can you talk a little bit about Everhart's? You sponsor, I forget the name of the trail, is it the All-American Kayak Trail at Everhart's? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's going to be the 6th year. It's in the spring every year, and we have clubs from all over the country can send their top 15 anglers for the year to this one. And they have a club side, which is the top 5 from each club's scores, and then they have an individual side. And we've had them from 12 to 13 states about every year for that one. 185 to 190 anglers in that one each year. Yeah, so that one, it pays $10,000 on the individual side to win it, and the team side, I believe it's $5,000 divided by the 5 guys that take that side of it.
Is that one of the bigger kayak tournaments in the Midwest, or I'm not as familiar with the kayak fishing scene like I am with the regular tournament fishing. Is there these large tournaments all over the place, or is that one of the bigger ones?
That one is one of the biggest ones. There's another one that's in the fall every year that another place in Hamilton puts on that also has the same amount of people, 140 to 180 in that one. And it has a big fish side that they pay $10,000 for the biggest fish for the day in that one. So that's kind of their drawing. Chad took that prize home a couple years ago down in that tournament. It's on Lake the Ozarks down there.
That's outstanding. Go ahead, Chad.
We're really lucky here in Missouri. Missouri has one of the strongest kayak fishing tournament scenes in the country, and it's in large part due to the great fishing water like Truman Lake and a lot of the other lakes that we have here in Missouri, Table Rock and Lake the Ozarks. We got some really great fishing lakes. And the clubs that we have in Missouri are some of the biggest in the country. And those 2 tournaments that he was talking about, the All-American Classic and then the Big Bass 250, those are not everywhere. We're really lucky to have two tournaments that you can win $10,000 to $15,000 here in Missouri. So it is pretty special.
How's the trajectory of the kayak tournament scene? I mean, it seems like it's growing every year. Has that been the case?
I think it's starting to level out a little bit now, or it seems to be in Missouri. You kind of get to a point where there's just not any more people to be able to do it really in some of these. But as far as the whole in the country, it's probably just pretty much leveled out. I think.
JV, you're the young guy up here, but you've done some fishing out of a kayak. Tell me a little bit about your experience, what you like about it. You did have a bass boat, you fished out of both. Give me some of the pros that you really enjoyed on the kayak side.
Yeah, the pros on the kayak side of things are just the expense mainly. I mean, if you've got a 20-foot fiberglass bass boat hauling it 30 minutes to the lake, you got to put gas in your boat, you got to put gas in your truck, it just adds up. Electronics, batteries, maintenance, it just adds up quicker than you think. With the kayak, it's mainly a buy once, cry once type of deal. You spend, on a quality fishing rig, you can get $2,500 and you're ready to do some fishing.
Yeah.
And you just charge up your batteries and go. The cost was the main thing to me to get into it.
And how long, with all that equipment that you're running on your kayak, were you able to be out on the water before your trolling motor dies or your graphs die?
Oh yeah.
All day?
Yeah, I can go with the battery setup I run. I can usually get a trip and a half to 2 trips.
Oh wow!
With my graphs and my motor running.
So what are you doing different fishing on a kayak on Truman? Are you still kind of hitting some of the main lake areas that a lot of the bass in the regular bass boats that they're hitting, or are you trying to get into areas up in the upper ends of the Tebow or the Palmer or the Osage where it just gets to be a little bit too shallow with the siltation? Are you trying to get to those areas, or do you still find yourself fishing in some of the main areas down the lower end?
Me personally, I mainly fish towards main lake just because that's where I like to fish. You got to be a little more strategic on the kayak side of things just because you can't run 60 mile an hour. So when I was fishing out of my bass boat, I could go fish this side of the lake and run down and fish the Osage, run up, fish the Tebow, when you're in a kayak, you kind of got to stick to an area. So I like finding a bigger creek that's got a lot of structure, a lot of shallow structure, a lot of deep structure. It gives me a lot of opportunity to fish everything and not have to travel and waste time.
Yeah. What are some of the safety considerations? I mean, obviously being in a kayak, you got big boats running by. What are some of the things you're setting up on the kayak to make sure people see you? I mean, what are some of the things people need to be thinking about to be safe out there?
Flags. You're required to have a flag in the tournament side of things in the back to make sure people can see you. Obviously, your PFD is the most important. Accidents do happen. If I'm going out, I always let friends or family know where I'll be fishing, just in case you do have an accident. People know where to be able to come find you and help you out. But that life jacket, man, make sure you got it on.
Yeah.
Because you hit a big rogue wave from a pontoon, they're stable, but you can get thrown out.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. When it comes to a little bit rougher water, you know, when do you need to be like starting to get really concerned? Is it when you start seeing those rollers, or does it handle that kind of stuff pretty well?
Well, I mean, for me in my kayak, and every kayak's different, the main thing is you want to be comfortable with whatever kayak you have and know what the limitations are. But in that Old Town Autopilot, I can't imagine flipping it over, and I've never had water that I felt uncomfortable with, and I've been in some pretty rough water, Lake of the Ozarks and some other lakes when the wind really gets up.
Yeah.
But you got to know the limitations and have experience with the boat that you're in, and you know, you always want to err on the side of safety. Some of the other pieces of safety equipment that I have, I've got some really bright LED lights, maxed out LEDs, make some great lights that you can see for miles. And I also keep one of those air horns. It's like the little canister air horn. So if there is a boat coming your way and you're afraid they might not see you, I keep that accessible where I can grab it and give them a blast, make sure they know I'm there. And I actually just mounted a auto bilge pump in my kayak just in case I get out in the middle of the lake and I start taking on water. So I got a plan.
Yeah.
Did
something prompt you to do that, or that was just you forward thinking?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what would happen, and I haven't had a problem, but I've had other people, like maybe you get a small crack or something, and all of a sudden you get out in the middle of the lake and you realize that you're taking on water, and things can go bad quick.
Yeah.
And so that way, you know, if I did get out there, number one, I would have an indication because it would start pumping the water out. And number two, I think it would keep up unless you had a really big hole where you could at least get to shore and not lose all that money you have in batteries and rods and reels and electronics due to your boat going down the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes we get out there in the middle of the lake and it might take you 10 minutes to get back to the shore. So, in a kayak, you can't just fire up the big motor and go. But, you know, everybody has a different comfort level and different level of kayak that they're in. Some kayaks, you know, the guys like to get back in a more narrower creek where they're out of the wind and there's not as much boat traffic. And, you know, and then some guys like JB and I, we like to get out there on the big water. So,
yeah, absolutely. Logistically, on tournament day, if I understand correctly, so you trailer anywhere, put in anywhere. You can be on the water, ready to start. Am I correct in that you could be out there and you just got to wait for that, whenever that minute is that it starts, you can start casting?
So most tournament circuits that we fish in Missouri and other regions too, they give you a half an hour. So we can put it anywhere on the lake, and they give us a half an hour to get out to our area. So if somebody's 2 miles or a mile from the ramp, they can be there, and then we have a start time. It's usually a half an hour that they allow us.
Okay, cool. You guys, all of you, have fished on Truman Lake and beyond. I know you both had major success in past several years, winning some of these big tournaments. Jared, last year, which one was it was it the All-American?
This spring I won the All-American $10,000 in that.
I was hoping you guys could just shed a little light for folks that are interested in this kayak side, how you break down Truman Lake. What are some of the areas you're looking at? You know, JB is talking about the deep water, you're talking about the main lake. How do you break down the lake, and are you doing anything different? Are you getting into some of these hard to reach areas?
I have, but a lot of times I end up fishing the same areas I always fish in the big boat on the lower end of the lake.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to fish it for 30 years, so I have fished every inch of this lake over the years in a big boat and now kayaks. And in some areas now that I couldn't get in a big boat because of a kayak.
Yeah.
But most of my success on this lake has been on the lower end of the lake, especially the last couple of years.
Yeah. What are some of, so I'm just thinking about just the process. You guys, a lot of people maybe don't realize this, when you do get to the spot where you are fishing, you're actually standing in the kayak a lot of times, correct?
Well, it varies. Jared sits most of the time,
Okay.
and he and I run the same kayak, but it's just whatever works best for you.
Yeah.
I like to stand. I kind of came from the bass boat world, and I'm used to standing and casting, but a lot of guys sit. It's kind of everybody does their own thing.
Yeah, yeah. What are some like tips? So you've been doing it for years. As you're sitting there, whether you're sitting or standing, what are maybe some products that have been just unbelievably helpful? Just on how you move around the kayak. What are like just some tips logistically on how to be an effective fisherman while you're sitting there in the kayak?
For me, I sit because I fish a lot of moving baits.
Okay.
So for me to be able to steer my kayak without using a hand, I can use my feet. So I can set my speed and throw, say, a crankbait. I'll set it at 0.6 miles an hour, and I can steer it with my feet hands-free. So I can go down a bank and steer between the trees, and there's a few kayaks that allow you to do that. Chatfish is more slower baits, not as much moving baits probably is what I do the majority of the time. So that makes it nice for me to be able to sit down. But if I'm flipping or if I get in a place that's got grass or pads, I can stand up and still be able to flip that way too. And there's really nothing else you need other than a good stable kayak to be able to stand and fish like that.
Yeah, absolutely. On the tournament side, it's a little bit different. You're not bringing in bags of fish to weigh. You're actually measuring the length of fish. So, like if someone is interested in the tournament side, I fished one kayak tournament in my life, and I figured out a lot on how to handle these stinking fish in such a small area. Can you speak to that a little bit, Chad, on how you get the fish in the boat and also don't let it flop right back out into the water?
Yeah, I mean that's always a risk, and it seems like it happens to everybody at some point. And every tournament, somebody's got a story about the one that was on the board and then jumped out of the boat before they got a picture. So kayak tournaments, you have to use. We have an official measuring board, and then we take a picture of the fish on the board, and then that gets uploaded to a tournament app that they use to track the tournament. The tournament director can judge the fish, and everybody has a little bit different procedure for how they take the pictures of their fish. I'm lucky to be, I have a big stable kayak, and I'm a fairly small guy, so I can actually kind of kneel down inside my kayak, and I lay my board down in the floor of the kayak and hold the fish down on the board, and if he jumps, he usually stays in the kayak. Some people, if they have a smaller kayak, they have to put the board on their lap, and a lot of those people will take their landing net and they'll stick it right on the side of the board, because usually if they jump, they're going to jump the direction they're pointed, and they'll just jump into the net. And so that's what a lot of people do. You kind of got to figure out what works for your situation, but it can be kind of tricky because a lot of times, especially like some smallmouth, sometimes they don't want to sit still, and so it can be a challenge to get the fish to sit still with their mouth closed and get a good picture of them.
Are you guys allowed, so you had like a really nice fish, you didn't want to risk it, are you guys allowed to bank the kayak and like step out and do that all on the ground if you wanted to do, or is that against the rules?
Well, the picture has to be taken inside the kayak.
Okay.
You can, it would be legal for you to pull your kayak up on the bank and stand outside the kayak, but the board would still need to be inside the kayak when you take the picture. Of course, that eats up a lot of time, and you may not necessarily always be somewhere where you can pull on the bank if there's like sharp bluffs or whatever, but sometimes you can do that if you caught a big fish and you're like, I don't want to lose this fish, I want to make sure I get a good picture, you can certainly do that.
Sure. JB, as far as like if you're sitting there fishing, like what's rod management look like? So Chad's talking about 10 rods, so he's got like 5 back behind him. I mean, do you have them where you got a couple in front of you? Are they all behind you and you're just fishing with one at a time and you're reaching around? Like how does that work?
I usually carry 9, and I have 1 in my hands and then 8 in the back. I never have any extras up front. I've broke too many doing that, trying to fight fish, and I'll stand up and step on them and bust guides off or snap a tip. So I keep all mine behind me, and it's just making sure you're not running into trees. Just kind of know where you're at, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm trying to think. Is there any other little tips and tricks to all that kind of stuff, managing the tournament side of it? I remember it being such a chore doing it for the first time. Anything that you didn't mention that you think people should know about if they're going to get into tournaments, with just logistically managing the way they're fishing and all their equipment?
I would say, like, if you just start getting started, you don't necessarily have to take 10 rods and a whole bunch of tackle.
Yeah.
You know, pick a few baits that you have confidence in. Truman Lake, for example, depending on the time of year, of course, but a jig plays a lot. And, you know, you can go out with a jig and you can do a lot with just a jig, flipping it around, swimming it, or whatever. You can, you know, from pretty much the spawn throughout the fall, a buzzbait's a big player. Maybe a square bill or a chatterbait. Just, you want to try and cover several areas of the water column, the bottom, the middle, and the top. And if you have 1 or 2 baits for each of those that you have confidence in, and a few rods, you can go out and you don't have to make it as complicated as we make it sometimes.
Yeah. When's the next big kayak tournament going to be on Truman this year?
It'll be next spring. It'll be the All-American Classic
so
again.
coming
First weekend of May.
First weekend of May.
Yeah.
So just here in 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, they have a winter series. They actually canceled one for today, and it's postponed till next week on Lake the Ozarks. And I don't know if it'll happen then either because of the temperatures.
Yeah,
The next big one in Missouri will be Lake of the Ozarks in March.
Okay.
It's our first big tournament.
Okay.
But then the All-American will be in May. You could fish 2 to 3 tournaments a month year-round in Missouri, not just on Truman, but in Missouri. There's that many kayak series, different series in different groups and in different groups or different clubs.
Yeah.
So you could fish them almost, probably two a month you could fish, but then they have month-long tournaments that you can fish, so you could fish year-round any day of the week that you can available and you'd be able to fish in the tournament.
With that in mind, I kind of will wrap it up kind of talking about this. I want to know what your guys' advice and tips would be for folks that are going to be fishing the big one on Lake of the Ozarks, what you would be doing, trying to find some fish, and then also some recommendations for folks that may be here on Truman in May, what you guys would be looking for and trying to do to find the fish.
Chad's home lake is kind of like the Ozarks, and he'll be able to talk more about it. But on Truman in May, it can be a variety of different things depending on the weather. This last May, I actually caught fish in beds to win that tournament. Of course, the lake was 14 foot high, so there was fish in the bushes, the water was falling, so it was changing every day. So I basically found that the fish were pulling out of the bushes, but they were still super shallow. And I caught most of mine finesse fishing in that tournament.
Could you see them? Were you like
I could see beds, no fish in the beds, but when I would throw a Cinco into it, they would just swim in and attack it. Yeah, cool. So it was, some fish were done spawning in and some were just getting ready to start, I think, at that point, last May.
Yeah.
If the water stays down, it'll be a completely different tournament, you know, but most of the fish were caught on the lower end of the lake within 6-7 miles of the dam because of the water clarity last year.
And that's a pretty consistent fact for Truman Lake anymore these days, that if you want to go find bass, the lower end, the lower 5 miles is really the place to be here in the last 5
and there's some giant fish on the upper ends and up some of these creeks that the boats can't get to. But finding 5 of those in one day is the problem a lot of times. And then if you get into an area, we had a tournament in June, late June. This year, home lake, I went to an area that you couldn't get to in a bass boat even on that day. And pre-fishing, I had a 7-pounder and another one about 5. So I couldn't keep from going back to it. I basically bombed a week later or 4 days later, and fish weren't there because of the water falling. Yeah. You know, and it was one of the
How much had it fallen by that time in the week?
In that 4 days, about a foot or 14 inches.
Okay.
And that's all it took to pull them out.
Yeah, so that was very interesting. 'Cause I was wondering if it was several feet or.
Yeah. So that's the home lake curse. That's what gets you sometimes. Is I should have been at the lower of the lake and caught 80 inches.
Yeah.
But I thought I could go catch 100. You know, up the river.
Yeah. What about on Lake of the Ozarks, Chad?
Well, that big bass tournament on Lake of the Ozarks is held in the fall. And so usually, you know, in October, late October, early November, that time frame, it's really hard to beat a head knocker buzzbait from Gator for a big bass. And that tournament is about, you know, one big bass can win you $10,000. So I actually, when I won that the first year, I won it on a head knocker buzzbait, and it's been also won by somebody else on a head knocker as well. So that's definitely something that is a big player. It's something else that works really well. Of course, Lake of the Ozarks has a ton of docks, and a kayak specifically works great because you can really get in behind it, in between those docks, even easier than a bass boat. You don't have to worry about banging your boat against the dock because it's a kayak. And you can get back behind those dock cables and walkways and really get in places you can't get to with a bass boat. And those fish don't see as many lures back there. And so that's another way to catch some good bass is in behind those boat docks with your kayak where you can't get to in other boats.
Yeah, that's a totally different thing that we don't have here at Truman is the whole dock infrastructure. It's amazing to think about all the fish that are sitting on those docks.
Yep.
So, JV, what would you be doing here on Truman?
Same thing as Fosnow's doing. I mean, we fished together quite a few years, so usually when we're fishing a kayak tournament, we're waving at each other all day long. I always stay on the lower end unless I really find something up a creek, but you got to be on them because if they've left, you're stuck there. So going back, I know that's why I like to stay on the lower end because there's so much good water and it all connects. You can just jump from spot to spot and know there's fish in the area. But if the water's high, fishing the bushes, whether it's with a jig or a brush hog, throwing a buzz bait around the bushes, a chatterbait. If the water's normal, throwing a square bill around standing timber and down the channel swing banks is always a player.
Yeah, absolutely. You did just prompt a thought. So, say you end up in a spot like what you were talking about, Jeremy. You bombed. I guess in that case, it didn't make sense to move because of where you were. But if you wanted to, you're allowed in these tournaments to pick up and trailer to a new spot, right?
Yeah, we can pack up and load. Some guys are faster at it than others. Some guys take a half hour to get loaded up. I can do it in about 10 minutes in my setup and be moving to the next spot. Where I was at, the 2 days I pre-fished that area were in the afternoon, so I really thought those fish would turn on, you know, the 1 o'clock time frame, so I didn't choose to move. So that's what got me in that one. But yes, I have multiple times. 2 years ago, I got second in the All-American Classic, and I actually moved both days. I had to pack up and move because the water quality wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and moved, and still took second after losing about 6 hours of fishing in those 2 days.
And on Truman and Lake of the Ozarks, to win one of these tournaments, so again, we talked about how you're not weighing fish, you're actually measuring fish. 5 fish, what's typically going to win one of these tournaments? Is it 80 inches? Is it 90 inches? What typically puts you in that top 2 or 3 spots?
You really about have to be in that 80-inch range to cash a check. I'm not exactly for sure what I had. I probably averaged about 83 or 4 inches this spring to win this one. Some tournaments will take, Truman Lake, if the water conditions were right, it could take 200 inches on a 2-day tournament, 100 inches each day. And it's just the water's been high every spring when we've had this tournament. So
200 inches, so that's, 100 inches a day, that's 5 fish. I mean, that's basically 5, 4.5, 5 pounders?
You're in that 20-pound range when you hit that 100-inch mark.
Wow. That's really cool. Well, look, I think we covered quite a bit. If you guys had any final thoughts you wanted to share, feel free. But I just want to say thank you to these guys, JB Gray, Chad Davison, and Jared Fosnow. They can find you guys on Facebook. They can find you guys at the Everhart store. You've got new canoes and Old Towns in stock.
We've got new canoe and Old Towns. We can motorize any of them. Some of them come with motors. We got pedal kayaks and motorized kayaks. We've got everything to rig them, batteries, everything you need. Before we quit, I want to have Chad talk about a new series that they started with the Be More. necessarily for beginning fishermen, but for beginner kayakers. Moyak has started one called a grassroots series.
Okay.
And it's going to be on smaller lakes, and it's no electronics and no motors. So it allows guys to get out there in a $500 to $600 kayak and still be able to compete. Chad may know more about the lakes that they're fishing in that one.
Yeah, I'm going to fish a few of them. The season opener for that series is going to be on Taneycomo down there in Branson.
Wonderful.
And then I know
That's a
they're
sneaky bass lake.
Big bass.
I know also fishing a lake in northern Missouri called Pony Express.
Yep.
Council Bluffs Lake down in southern Missouri. Big Palm de Terre, and probably one other that I'm...
Yeah, Stockton will be one, and
Stockton.
Bushwhacker Lake in southwest Missouri.
Pony Express, you might have a chance at a muskie, if I understand correctly.
I've never been there, but I did sign up for that one.
Yeah.
They are limiting the field size on those because a lot of them are smaller lakes, so it's the first 30 people to sign up. But it is pretty neat that it's manpower only, paddle or pedal, no motors, no power poles, no electronics whatsoever. So, people won't be using their graphs or anything like that. So it's a throwback to the way kayak fishing kind of got started.
Yeah. These are couple thousand acre lakes, basically. Is that the deal?
Mostly,
Yeah.
Pommy and Stockton are a little bigger, but for the most part, they're trying to put them on smaller lakes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's exciting. And any websites people can go to get more information on that stuff that you know of off the top of your head?
Yep. Probably one of the biggest clubs in the country is Moyak here in Missouri. Their website is moyakfishingseries.com.
Okay.
There is another club in Missouri called Kayak Anglers of Missouri, and it's a strong club as well. And it's the same thing, kayakanglersofmissouri.com. So you can look both those up on the internet, and they're pretty easy to find, and there's a lot of information.
Both on Facebook too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, wonderful. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys joining us up on stage here at the Truman Lake Fishing Expo 2026. Braving the Arctic cold to get out here. For anyone out there that's been walking around and maybe didn't get a chance to listen, we have been recording this whole thing, so you can go to trumanlakefishingintel.com. It'll be up on our YouTube channel as well. We'll have this full video and interview available there, along with hundreds more videos, fishing reports, news, articles, everything you want to know about Truman Lake. So be sure to check that out. Thank you again to these guys, Jared Fosnow, Chad Davison, and JB Gray. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys here at the show. Thanks a bunch.